Hi, my name is Randhula and we are having a conversation with Kasturi today at She Slays for Echelon. Kasturi, let's get started with the big picture. You've contributed to the Sri Lankan economy for decades now. Are you happy with where the country is at right now?
You open up with a tough question. Firstly, let me lay context. Yes, I think I've been in the workforce for over 3 decades, right? And I've seen from a time I was a kid, I think through 77, I've experienced the time where we didn't have access to food, where we had coupons, even for rations and stuff. Then we went through, being from the minority, been at the receiving end of the 83 communal riots. As a country, we've gone through war. Then we went through an economic kind of semi-crisis post the war, came out of it. Today, we went through the pandemic, right? And we handled it quite well compared to the rest of the world. And the situation we are in is one of virtually, I think we're struggling to be solvent, and we have a forex liquidity issue. We've come out of things like having ethnic disharmony. We've worked towards it, and you don't do things, you don't find solutions alone. So in this context, I think, look, none of us would be happy with this situation. As a Sri Lankan, I would want my country to do better. As Sri Lankans, I would want to see people having access to be able to run businesses, to have jobs, and to see their kids being able to really live their lives better. But unfortunately, it's going to be tough times. I think what I would like to see more is collaboration between government, private sector, opposition, politicians leaving political agendas aside, media leaving, doing the role right by the country, and making sure you restructure, you kind of find a solution. And the solution is not going to be easy. You're not going to get overnight inflows of foreign currency because the negative sentiments which are out there. So how do we band together to say, yeah, it's tough times, but we would come out of it this way. So I think that is important. And I think people in power now kind of understand, and they're trying to work towards it, but we should have done this a bit earlier. And the fact that this problem is not going to go away. I think that we also have to understand as people that this is not going to go with a magic wand, and there's no quick fix. So in that context, am I happy that our country is going through this? No, I'm not. I guess with every crisis, you have to look at opportunity, right? And the opportunity is not only for growth, but for us to be more productive and efficient. So even the private sector has to be more efficient, do more with the same resources. The apparel sector is one sector I admire because they're competing globally. So they're always reinventing themselves. The state, public sector, I mean, yeah, you fight for salary increases, but also you try and be more productive. They're citizens before they are a public servant, right? Absolutely. That's what really irks me. We forget who we are. We are people of the land, and this is our land. We can't go to any other country and say, this is my country. So why don't we do our part to make that happen? And we all have to start. It starts from us. So that way I'm not happy at all, because I'm sure if the government takes a tough decision, the opposition is waiting to hammer, and the media, they use the media for all sorts of stuff. But I wish it's a lovely wish list, but I wish we could all wake up and think country matters and do what's right by the country. At least make sure that the next generation, our kids, have a better life, and we take the brunt for that. Yeah.
Your answer really touched on so many different aspects. You talked about crisis, you talked about seeing opportunity in the crisis, and you talked about what you're really unhappy about of people's take on this crisis as well. And I'm going to draw from that, Kasturi, into our next question. Hemas Holdings announced you as the Group Chief Executive Officer on 1st of October 2020. This was celebrated. This was also the height of the pandemic. we didn't know when the lockdowns were going to end. We didn't know very many things. It was a lot of uncertainty around us. And what was expected out of you wasn't anything that was expected out of anybody who was on that seat before. Let's talk a bit about that. Tell us about how you took charge, the impact or the pivots that you made in your company by taking charge at a point like that, with a position like that.
Yeah, Randhula, now fast forward, I must tell you, even though I took over officially on the 1st of October, the preparation of me being the successor took place, I think, easily 3 years before, but there were other people, who were also being groomed. And maybe 12 months before they kind of accelerated, and I knew I had to find a successor in the existing business. But the mandate at that point, remember, I'm just playing context, is how my mindset had to change, was how do you take this business and grow, and how do you unleash potential of the people? So it was all strategic growth, new growth. It was nothing to do with looking at driving through crisis. And March happens, and when I become a deputy CEO, I realized, all my plans had to be shelved, and I was definitely not going to even use those. So it was tough. It was a change in how I had to look at the business. I still was, and I'm a very competitive person. So while and maybe coming from the sports background, I'm used to uncertainty and challenges, and I'm used to making decisions during that time. And I'm also used to making a decision, and next day when you see another challenge, making another decision. So because that's how the sports field is. But the pressure on that is how do I navigate this company? Because remember, during Easter Sunday, we also got impacted, right? By any chance, we didn't need that. But the most important thing was Hemas was we were importing essential drugs, and we were manufacturing near essentials. How do you make sure that you keep people safe and you get this whole mechanism and ecosystem running? And in healthcare, particularly in pharma, we had to be the leader, because you're a leader, right? You're the market leader. And by far, how can you say, let's wait for somebody else to find a solution? You have to find the solution. That was basically it. My thought process. How do I get the teams calm? I was clear that I had 3 buckets I worked on. But firstly, I had to calm down the teams, because remember, they were seeing the volatility around, and when you're in these businesses, you see what's happening firsthand. Give them a sense of security. Train them or teach them how to take care of themselves. So while that happened, how can you extract more out of the business you're doing? That's the core business. How can you what was the strategy on that? So you have to become healthier, gain market share. That was there. But I also said that doesn't mean you're not going to grow new business, because what we didn't do enough was innovation. So we kind of push teams to think out of the box, and encourage the younger generation to speak their mind and think out of the box, because sometimes all of us, we've been through the system too long, and we've lost the ability to be innovative, and we have to acknowledge that. So you need to bring this fresh blood, but give them an ecosystem to think.
Sure.
And amazingly, we started this agenda of measuring and bringing out innovation. And the amazing things, I think somebody brought this heirloom rice.
Yes.
And it was inspired by, I think, SK2 was doing something, and they said, why can't Sri Lankan rice is so good? And so we accelerated that. And the third aspect is how can we be more productive? And I must say, as a country, but more than the country, as a company, we had not leveraged it on digital. So we actually had to accelerate that. And so you keep those simple pillars, track those, encourage them, understand the impact on what work from home would mean to everybody. Especially when you're working from home, it's not the work. The fact that, especially from a woman's point of view, I understood when you have kids and husbands and you don't have the domestics coming in, what it means. So while you adjust to that, I think we just made sure that it was business as usual, not as usual, but business. And how can we grow from that? But and remember, when I took over, it was mostly virtual, right? How do I engage with the team, and how do I get them understand my strategy? So it was not easy, but I guess you do it slowly, you chip away consistently, you message it, and you be the change what you want to see in others. So basically, yeah.
Living your words of wisdom.
I guess so.
And at this time, Kasturi, your appointment to now, you're celebrated largely as a woman leader and the first woman to be leading a conglomerate in Sri Lanka in this position. Let's also talk about the unheard side of this story. What learnings and unlearnings did you have to go through this role, and what kind of pressure does it add to you actually on a day in, day out?
Yeah, so, Randhula, that was the biggest learning for me. Was I grew a lot because of it. Is because while I was focusing internal and getting ready to take over the role and figuring out successor for the existing business, what I was handling, and this announcement came, I think it came somewhere in May or June, I realized the impact it had outside, right? So weirdly, I had a couple of buckets. The biggest bucket was the younger generation who were like my cheerleaders, saying thanks to you, we have hope. And that really kind of opened my eyes, thinking, look, the younger generation is looking at me as hope, and they aspire to now, it's kind of a path open for them. But this path, I have to succeed to make sure that that path is not a path of legacy of failure. But then you have the rest. There are people who said, yeah, what's the big deal? And yeah, because she was a woman, she got the job, and you forget what you've achieved. And really, when I was in crisis, and at least the country was in crisis, and we were navigating the business in this environment, my thing was, look, whatever happens, I cannot fail. I cannot let the first 12 months define, and it can't go down, can't be bad, because that's not the legacy I want to leave the younger generation. So I had to eliminate all the noise of the people around and just focus on work. And it was unbelievable, the pressure it had on me. And even though I didn't speak about it then, it really did have a toll on me, because it was like, imagine the narrative if Hemas had degrowth because I took it over. Imagine the narrative on that. Leave it to me, forget about me. Kasturi would have come and gone. But imagine the impact on the younger generation. So that was my whole obligation. I need to make sure that a woman could, because I didn't realize the impact it had outside, right? So I was not prepared for that. When I realized that impacted them so much, I was quite keen that I just have to leave it so that I at least be successful, so that many other talented women can be way more successful than me. So that was a pressure, and COVID didn't help at all.
Sure.
And now the economy doesn't help, but at least now it's almost 2 years since I kind of took over as deputy CEO. So, yeah.
Definitely a trail that you've blazed on for very many more to follow.
I think there are so many talented people who are really way better than me, women who would do much better than me.
And thank you for giving them hope and continuing to do so, if I may speak on their behalf.
If it was, I learned the word, the glass cliff. Somebody sent that note to me, and I didn't know what it meant. I've heard about shattering the glass ceiling, but the glass cliff. So when I went through that, I went and Googled it. It meant putting a woman in a position which is really tough that you can't achieve. So if you don't, because it's kind of a really tough position, and if you don't achieve or succeed, you say it's because of a woman, because it was a woman who took that role.
Sure.
So I was really, and somebody kind of drew parallels to that.
That's a view from the top we usually don't hear of. Kasturi, let's move on to a bit of your personal journey through the crisis, especially. Let's first talk about the idea of power. You are in a powerful position. You've been in power for a long time. What have you learned about yourself since you became a well-known figurehead in the corporate Sri Lankan world?
So for me, power is not a title. It has never been. I would say that for me, definition is being able to do things which matter to you, And if in the corporate setting, having the control and power to do the changes I want and to actually shape the future of young people. And if you look around now at Hemas, I think we have quite a bit of young talent in the mid-30s who are holding directors' roles. And I'm proud to say most of them, quite a bit of female leaders there. And the power of putting the right people at the right place, irrespective of the biases, I think is important. Personally, I think everybody, if you are in a place where you could help somebody, support somebody, and not expect anything in return because that person can't give you anything back, that's a place of power. And that's how you use it. So everybody has power, whichever role you are in, whichever part of society and whichever job you're doing, you have the power. You have the choice of making choice of using it wisely. So I guess for me, if I choose to use whatever power or whatever levers I have within my control to impact the company or impact the people in the company to achieve greater things, that means I've done my job well. And the legacy I should leave is, and I've told our leadership team, because we've got all our leadership team is about all in their early 50s, barring one who is a young lady. Other than that, I said the legacy should be we should groom a team of young leaders who will do way better than us. And when we leave, we should see them Hemas growing way better than what we did. And that sense of you've used your power rightly.
Absolutely.
And that's basically on a personal side is where I would say use it in a way you could impact society positively. And again, I'll go back to helping people for no reason because they won't be able to help you back. Don't expect anything in return. Yeah.
We spoke about how the past 2 years was for you, assuming the position and powering through it, changing the strategies and getting your team also on board to work with you through it. Tell me a little bit about how it was for you personally, how it affected your personal life, what you lived through as Kasturi the person.
Randhula, it was one of the toughest too. It was really tough. While I had the energy I was really up for the challenge and I love challenges. Personally, a big part of my motivation is my kids, my family. And my 2 boys are they're my entire world, right? And with the pandemic, they were in Australia. And I remember I'm a person who, to lay context, I would fly every 3 months to see them, even for 4 days, just to get connected with them and come back. And you just start the year thinking, okay, 3 months, 6 months, I could see them. And the strain shows. And you can't even fly to see them. So for me, while I navigate and be strong, and while there is vulnerability. I'm a human being. Sometimes I didn't have a choice. I couldn't break down because those that I couldn't control. I couldn't control the borders opening. So I'd rather not. I just could control the fact that if anything happened to them or happened to me, that God willing something I'll be able to access them. And so I managed it. But it took a lot out of me, and so much so I think eventually I think Hussein, who's our chairman, he realized there's a huge strain on me, and he just said, when borders opened and I said I'm going off to Dubai for a break, he said you need the break, just go, because it's been a long time. But it's really tough, and the worst was when both my kids got COVID finally in December, and I was here, and imagine when your loved one gets COVID, and
sure.
These are kids, they're not kids, they're adults. And I appreciate the Sri Lanka health system so much more, and versus Australia, because the kids had to just navigate for themselves, take care of themselves. And the helpline was a Sri Lankan doctor here, and we even had medicines being couriered because one of their friends, my elder son's girlfriend, had it bad. But so that took a toll on me, and so much so that I eventually, the day they kind of all said they're negative and stuff, I realized my stress knots had got so bad I had to go for physiotherapy. So that's the amount of toll. So it takes a lot. Then in the meantime, you are also navigating the 2 years with this whole thing of Kasturi the leader, you're navigating the news items, and you have so many people waiting to criticize you as a person, or wondering why you became the CEO. And I'm like, at one point you have to just stop and put your head down and work. So it opened my eyes up a lot about people, and then it also just made me focus on things I can control. And yeah, it was not easy. It was not easy, but I must say, like any challenge, when you're in it, you don't see it, but you come out of it, and then you think, you have that, you could do it. And a lot of it is you don't do it alone. You even speak to even as a CEO, I'll speak to my chairman. I need somebody's support, and I'll speak to the board and get other people's support. So because you're a human being, you're not a
superhuman machine.
Super machine, right? Forget the gender.
Sure.
And you're not supposed to come without vulnerability. So
it means a lot to hear it from you, and for you to really be transparent with that side of the story too. I think gives a lot of people that empowerment needed to bite the bullet. Because there's also a lot of us where we see times getting really tough with all this noise, and I think it helps a lot to also hear it from you.
And I think I was lucky at my team, my direct reports, all the MDs, and are very amazing human beings. So they all understand it. They all understand you're first human beings and you all have a role to play. But yeah, it was okay to be vulnerable with them.
What frustrates you, Kasturi?
Yeah. So I think I alluded to it before. What frustrates me is why people. So for me, I'm a person, I'm happy with what I define as for myself, right? And if I'm happy with what I've, forget the title, I'm saying whatever job I did, I was happy with it, that's fine. But as a person, when people out there say, why is she good, is she bad? I mean, it just frustrates me. I'm thinking, why are they measuring me from their standards? I'm measuring myself the way I am, and of course results can measure. So what frustrates me is that people in society, they actually compete so much. Even though it's a small island, it's big enough for all of us to be our unique self and do very well. I mean, I've seen you grow from your hatched days, and I mean, I think you're one of the talented stars, up and coming stars. And I mean, I think last year I listened to you at Women's Day, and I thought, wow, that was such a great, impacted so many. And that's your unique self. You're not me, I will never be you. So it's that constant thing, and in the last 2 years I got an overdose of that. So that really frustrates me. Yeah.
And what does living a good life, a contented life, mean to you?
Oh, that is, I think if a person figures out what makes you happy, and it might change over period, right? But you should know that, and being self-aware and investing in that. For me, without exercise, I'm unhappy. So I invest in that. For me, my kids are a big part of my life. Now that borders opened up, I am like packing my bags and I'm out. I might work from Australia for a week or two, but that makes me happy. I need to go to church, and I love giving back into to people who are underprivileged. That makes me happy. Some people, it doesn't make them happy, that's fine. But as long as you know what fulfills you, that's a good life. And honestly, I wear my title or all my job very seriously, and I'm proud about it, and I love my company. But that doesn't define me. I'm doing, like, I'm sure everybody else has a job, and it so happens this is my job. That definitely doesn't define me. It fulfills me when I achieve results. It fulfills me when I build young talent and see them growing. So it depends, and I guess now the company plays a bigger part of my personal fulfillment because my kids are big and gone, and they're overseas. But when I was younger, I mean, the job only paid my bills, and that's what's a fulfillment. The money that was the truth. I waited for my payroll to make sure that I paid my school bill, kids' bills, the food, and as long as I could feed them and keep a roof on their head and do things with them, that was my fulfillment. So you grow, evolve with time, right? And I love traveling around Sri Lanka, and if I can't do that, it's you have to figure out what makes you happy. And definitely you wouldn't find me trying to fit into society, because if I'm the way I am, and if they don't, and that doesn't define whether I'm a good person or a bad person. They have to put it. And coming to that realization is absolutely a good life. And of course, have some good people around you whom you know have your back all the time, and you can love unconditionally. Yeah.
This is a question I ask from a lot of people, and this by far is one of the most honest answers that I've got. Really? Thank you for that. To end with, Kasturi, going back to the big picture and also kind of combining it with your personal self, what do you believe one could or you could achieve in Sri Lanka that you can't achieve anywhere else in the world?
So at this stage in my life, I'm a Sri Lankan, and I'm identified here. And with that, I think I can do much more here for meaning younger generation, just the ones who come out of university, right? To help them to have more confidence and stuff. Put me in another location and another country, they wouldn't know the equity of what I bring in, and I wouldn't be able to impact people. So I guess what I can achieve here is my personal fulfillment, and giving back to the young is a big part of it. And I'm sure if no other country could give that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And that reminds me, 3.5 years ago, my younger self talking to you, and I still remember the good advice you gave me. Thank you for all that you do for Sri Lanka and the younger generation and all that you are.
Thanks, Randhula.